Hello, welcome back to Geek Warning, the cycling tech-focused podcast from Escape Collective. I'm Dave Rome. Joining me this week, my humble sidekick, Ronan. Welcome back.
Well, it's the first time I've ever been called humble, but you've thrown me a bit here. I don't know if I am or not.
Well, we'll see.
I would like to think I am, but I don't know. It's not being very humble if I say I'm humble myself, is it?
Yeah, I think so. All right, let's move on before we run it. Okay, well, this week we've got a full episode. There's some things from SRAM that we're desperate to talk about. I think Ronan has a question to ask me. There's a PSA and, of course, our regular news corner. Should we get into it?
Yeah, before we do, I have a bit of a hypothetical question for you.
Oh, no.
Imagine if we reviewed calculators, right? And I could do inputs that all look like I'm asking the calculator what is 2 plus 2. And then the answers it gives me from 5 or 6 different calculators, one gives me 3.8, another one gives me 4.2, another one gives me 4, another one gives me something else. The only true answer is 4. But would you find those answers from the other calculators useful?
I know where you're going with this, and I'm going to say maybe they're entertaining.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of the feedback we got off of last week's episode, if I think this is where you're headed.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely not very humble. But yeah, obviously last week's episode didn't exactly go as we had envisaged before we hit record, I think. But nevertheless, there's been a lot of feedback that basically the gist of the feedback is that the accuracy of the testing that we could do in terms of aerodynamics and that is secondary to actually doing it and reporting an answer, which, if I remember correctly, was like one of the main obstacles I had referred to in last week's episode was, it seems like an answer is more important than the accuracy of an answer these days, and I cannot stress enough how important the accuracy also is. Without accuracy, I might as well just make numbers up. Yeah,
it was quite interesting that we did an entire segment last week on why I would rather not publish data that is inaccurate or not repeatable versus just, putting numbers to something that we can't stand behind. And the feedback we got from some was, no, that's what we want. We just want random numbers. It's entertaining. And it shows you've been testing and trying, and we just give us your raw data. And it's like, but I don't know, kind of, perhaps we weren't very clear, or perhaps, we were poor in our communication of it, but it's, the feedback from that was interesting.
I'm not going to dance about this any longer. The assumption is that when we see these numbers online or on YouTube or on other podcasts, that they're accurate, and they are not. They are not.
Well, they might be accurate to the test, but as we said last week, the test is...
I put a long list into the Geek Warning Discord last night of things that need to be controlled that are never controlled.
Okay.
And without those controls, it is pointless.
All right. No arguments from me. Yeah. So, I think it's worth noting that, we're not opposed to this, and certainly we are always working on trying to provide more quantitative data with our testing. And I think we do, you and I certainly have tests coming up where we will have such data. And when you see us publish such data, just know that we've put a hell of a lot of time and effort into making sure that data is useful and accurate and applicable to real world. But certainly we're also doing a lot of testing and getting a lot of numbers that we aren't willing to stand behind and therefore aren't willing to publish. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, coming up on 3 years of constantly racking our minds on how can we actually do this thing in a useful way, and haven't cracked it yet. That doesn't mean we won't ever crack it. We're going to keep trying to crack it. But for the meantime, I think it's best to steer clear of random number generator stuff.
Yeah, fair. So, but I guess feedback noted. And I think the main feedback is let's not let that data get in the way of us actually publishing things. So all noted. We are actively trying to get more reviews out the door.
Which was kind of the point I was trying to make last week. It was like, if I could get back to remembering that everything else about a review is more important than how more or less aero one bike is versus another, I could get out of my own way and start writing more reviews. But that's the challenge that I've been facing of late, which was kind of the point I was trying to make and didn't make too well, and ended up down a different rabbit hole. So I'm trying.
Yeah.
And we're going to hopefully see more in the near future.
Absolutely. Yeah, expect more product reviews and all that from perspectives that we can stand behind. So, all right, Ren, let's move on with the big topic for this week, which is SRAM has been in the headlines in multiple things. Actually, we'll cover some of the other things later in Tech News Corner, but the big one is them taking UCI to court. Ren, I know you reported on this, so what's the story here?
Yeah, kind of exactly that. That's SRAM have had enough of the UCI's unwillingness to bend or accommodate or change its ridiculous gear restriction proposals, and so they've lodged a complaint with the Belgian Competition Authority that is effectively like taking the UCI to court to prevent this gear restriction trial from happening at the Tour de Guangxi in China at around about the middle of next month. And SRAM filed this complaint last week. The legal basis they're citing are Articles 101 and 102 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union.
Yes, of course.
And SRAM's core argument is that the UCI's proposed gear restrictions distort the drivetrain market, unfairly target SRAM teams and SRAM themselves, and breaches EU competition law.
Yeah. So for those that haven't been following this, basically the UCI's gear restriction trial was going to be based on a 54 tooth chainring and 11 tooth rear cog as like the maximum gear, and then they'll kind of just making like some broad assumptions over tire diameter in order to get the rollout from that. But yeah, where SRAM sits on this is they, with their 10 tooth smallest cog, would basically be restricted to a slightly smaller gear rollout because of how the gear ratios work out. Is that a pretty fair way to summarize it?
It's kind of a lazy approach. So yeah, 5411 was the combination that the UCI had decided upon, and it seems like nobody over at the UCI stopped to think, oh well, do all the teams have 5411s? And yeah, you would very quickly realize that SRAM cassettes start at 10 tooth. So the 11 part of that's not going to work. But then if you dug a bit further, you would also see, well, SRAM riders are using 54s, 56s at the moment. They sometimes use 50 tooth chain rings. But the smallest chainring, or the biggest chainring SRAM riders could use to comply with this same rollout with their 10 tooth sprockets would be a 49 tooth chainring. And now the issue there is that SRAM don't make a 49 tooth chainring, and so SRAM riders have to drop even further down to a 48, which I mean, I'm sure the riders feel that they're disadvantaged by having a 48, which is ever so slightly smaller. But SRAM's sort of key position is like the reputational damage that's done by this, and the market confusion and the legal exposure that arises from all this is as big an issue, if not a bigger issue. So basically, they're moving to try to prevent this trial from happening, which would then prevent the rule change from happening.
I think what's perhaps most amusing amongst this is that there's rumors floating around the industry that Shimano might be headed towards the same gearing issues in future. So like the whole argument of Shimano being in the pockets of the UCI and getting unfair treatment and an unfair boost in market position is funny when you sort of hear the rumors of what potentially is coming for the next generation of Durace.
Yeah, isn't this the appeal of conspiracy theories, is that they usually make so much sense? And then when you scrape back the surface, you go, oh, that actually doesn't add up. And I think that's very much what's happening here, because the assumption around the 5411 combination was like, oh, that favors Shimano because that's a Shimano combination. And oh, look, Shimano actually sponsored the UCI as well. That has to be a conspiracy. And yeah, actually, it seems like I don't know how much we can say and can't say, but from what we understand, the unreleased, unspoken of next generation of group set from Shimano is designed around a 10-tooth cog. And so actually this is as bad an idea for Shimano as it is for SRAM. And somewhat coincidentally, I think perhaps leaves Campagnolo best positioned because
Until they release a
their
9-tooth.
yeah, but despite their decline in presence at World Tour level, they now have potentially they could have the only group set with that's actually designed around a 5411.
Interesting.
Ready to roll next year to
Gotcha.
suggest.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, yeah, one we'll be watching closely. But speaking of the UCI, I mean, is there? You're telling me a couple of days ago that there was meant to be some upcoming progress of handlebar width rulings. What's happened there?
Yeah, so obviously the handlebar width, lever width, and rim depth rules that were announced back in June. The final step of the process for implementing those is that they would go to a vote that would happen at the World Championships week, which is this week.
Okay.
And so, as we understand it, that vote was scheduled to happen yesterday. Now there have been no press releases, no tweets, no carrier pigeons, nothing bringing us the news of how that vote went. But I know I know there were emergency meetings as late as Monday evening. The vote was happening on Tuesday. We don't know yet. Did they go ahead with the vote? Did they shelve it for a while? What's happening here? The understanding amongst many within the industry was that the exact measurements they were used were going to be adjusted, and they were going to drop it down to like 280 mil between the levers rather than the 320 they had proposed. I think the hope is that they might drop it to 300 mil between the levers, but the expectation is that actually the UCI are going to double down and force through the 320 mil, which actually, it
would be a shame. Yeah,
would actually be a big problem.
Yeah, we've covered that in the previous podcast about why that would be bad news and why, even how like Adam Hansen, who was largely responsible for those original numbers, has since sent a correction to the UCI, sort of explaining how things went wrong and why he doesn't stand by those numbers anymore. Yeah, so one to watch. Hopefully we have some news, and I'm sure, Ron, you're eagerly wading across it. I know you're waiting indoors for any news to break to cover rather than riding your bike. So hopefully the news breaks soon so you can go ride your bike.
I went for a bike ride yesterday and I got like 10 minutes from home and an email came through from Shimano with a comment and I rushed home to read it and it was a no comment.
Love it.
That power PB on the way home was kind of,
It's one way to get you into
wasn't necessary.
No. All right, cool. Let's move on to what's on our minds. And I don't know what this is. Ronan, I think you just have a question for me. What is it?
Yeah, I think this sort of came to me, Dave, because I think you and I are sort of bringing different approaches to this podcast. Obviously, you're the expert master mechanic or whatever you want to call it.
20 years into being an aspiring mechanic.
Okay. But I was thinking the other day where like one thing that would really make testing bikes much quicker and easier for me would be if we could have like if someone could invent a rideable and adjustable stem length. So you kind of got the Canyon adjustable handlebar width. If we could get that for stem length, oh my God, that would just be, for me, that would be, speed up the whole process.
It's the dream.
I mean, it also probably lead me down new rabbit holes. It just slows the process down again, but at least I would be happy. And it kind of got me thinking, like from your, like as a mechanic, what one thing that doesn't exist would make your job easier? Or what, like, have you ever had that, I just wish this thing existed when you're in the workshop?
I'm sure there's many things like that, but I mean, for me, when you talk about the one thing that I kind of wish existed more or was better, I think for me, so much time is spent on the cleaning when it comes to bike servicing. I think if you ask shop mechanics, what they did most of the day, or the task that they are so sick of, but it has to be done with every service is the cleaning side of it. Whether it's standing over a parts washer or wiping rims down, because I think the one universal truth of every bike service is that the customer gets their bike back, and not every customer can feel or see or understand what the mechanic has done, but they can see a clean bike. And I think it's the same as when you take your car into a dealership for a service. They typically wash it because the customer sees that. Or so I think it's for me it's the cleaning side of things. And I think anything that I could have to speed up that process or even automate it is probably going to be the answer. And I certainly have things that attempt to do that, but there's always room for improvement. And
Sounds like what you want is staff.
basically, I just need a work experience kid that I can trust to stand over a parts washer, and hopefully not in a way that I remember one of my last bike shop jobs, which would just have the work experience kids standing over the parts washer of kerosene with no gloves and not telling them to put gloves on or any sort of PPE. And
the work experience I did, Dave,
I wasn't involved.
Was in a gym, and they had me clean the tiles above the waterline in the swimming pool with a toothbrush.
Whew, that's one way to keep you occupied.
That kept me very occupied. So there's nothing bad that couldn't be worse.
But yeah, I think such cleaning tools, it sparks perhaps a tangent for me, because it's I don't know, it's actually been on my mind lately, where it's like you can get automated cleaning tools that you put a whole bike into and either do the bike wash for you, or like they're a bike bath that you can wash an entire bike with in sort of like a small space with like a degreaser based water that runs through a hose and a blow dryer and all these sort of things. And they're not cheap things. They're kind of like a pet wash service that you'd see at like some businesses might have them at the back of the business, where you can take your pet and give your pet a bath. But these are designed for bikes, and they cost tens of thousands of dollars to install into a bike shop. And for me, that's not necessarily the solution. I think it achieves the bike looks clean on the outside mandate for customers, but I also I think like any tool, they can be misused. And I think in some cases, sometimes those bikes might go back to the customer in potentially worse condition than they came in, because they look clean on the outside, but they now have degreaser based water kind of sitting in the pivots and other areas if not used correctly. So for me, I'm somewhat of a perfectionist, and I would feel the need to pull apart the bike if I were to first wash it that way. But I don't know. That's not to say that everyone with those tools is causing damage. But I'm not going to go that far. I know some shops have these things and they use them correctly, and the bikes are better for it. But for me, I'm if I'm going to degrease a drivetrain, I'm going to take the crank out and actually inspect the spindle and check the bottom bracket bearings. Use the opportunity to check all these things. I'm not going to degrease a cassette while it's on the rear hub. I'm instead going to degrease the cassette and at the same time pull apart the rear hub, and grease the free hub that is severely overlooked. So very different approaches, but I think it's one takes significantly more time than the other as well. So not every shop is set up in a way that could justify spending that amount of time pulling everything apart. It's all about a service level, and I understand that different business models and different requirements. Certain shops need to get through 12, 15, 20 bikes a day in order to be profitable. So I'm not going to judge.
I mean, at the same time, Dave, you're very much not saying that bike washing is bad.
No, bike washing is good, and a clean bike is good. I just think if for a shop to take money for a bike service, I think the general expectation is that they'll only benefit the bike and only improve on the bike on the things that they touch. And I have seen situations where these bike wash machines just might clean the bike, but they might also leave the brakes contaminated, or as I said, like degreaser in places that perhaps the seals aren't up to keeping out. So you might end up shortening the life of the bearings as a result. And I think that's just it's not so much a PSA or anything, but I just my personal opinion is that if I'm going to service a bike, I only want the bits that I only want to improve on the bike. Even if I don't service the entire bike or rebuild the whole thing, I don't want to make it worse in any regard. And so I guess that's where my head's at with that.
Kind of leads to another question for me. And like for you, if there's an opportunity to keep the bike going for a customer versus replacing everything that needs replaced. If you can like short term resolve an issue because it's cheaper for the customer, it doesn't actually replace a part, which might be, I'm just thinking if you go into a bike shop, there's an incentive there for the bike shop to replace a part rather than fix a part. Where do you land on that?
I would say it depends greatly on the shop. Some shops, their ethos is to repair, not replace. I would say, generally speaking, though, broadly speaking, the bike industry has moved to a model of replace, not repair. And I think a lot of that also comes through a general loss of experience throughout the industry, as people with the experience have been forced to go get better paying jobs elsewhere. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think it depends is probably the main answer. If I can repair a part and be confident that it'll last or is safe or serve its function, I'm probably going to do that. But it's also like a trade-off of time versus reward. So like the one example I often give is that it is possible to fully rebuild a SRAM hydraulic mountain bike disc brake. You can buy seal kits for the master cylinder for the lever. You can buy seal kits and piston kits for the caliper. But the way they price the kits, the service kits, and for however long it takes, you actually end up often, if you're charging correctly for your time, it is cheaper for the customer to just replace it with a brand new part. I know that varies, like in some parts of the world where labor is a lot cheaper, that swings back the other way, where the repair is cheaper. But certainly in Australia, where it's common for mechanics to now be at 120, 150 Australian dollars an hour. Yeah, certainly spending 30 minutes repairing a brake is going to get you pretty quickly to the cost of a new brake. So I think that's something that depends greatly on what the part is. But yeah, certainly like I'm all for like replacing bearings and bottom brackets and all that sort of stuff rather than throwing away the whole bottom bracket if it can be done. All right, well, yeah, let's move on to something else. But probably worth noting that for me, at least now, for how I service bikes, which is, if I'm going to degrease a chain, like I said, I'm probably going to, if it's not my bike, I'm going to probably remove the crank just to inspect it and check the free hub and all that. And in those scenarios, I would say the closest I've come to automating that process is one, having like a very good dedicated parts washer that's ready to go, that you're not having to move chemicals around with. It's just permanently there. And the other one would be having like an effective ultrasonic cleaner that you can trust is not going to damage anodizing, and also one that ideally you've remembered to preheat, because it's really the heat that makes the ultrasonics effective. But yeah, frankly, if a cassette or a crankset is super filthy and gunked up, I'm probably just going to do it by hand because it's more efficient than doing it in an ultrasonic. So
I know you want to move on, but there's maybe an understanding that the owners of the bikes that you service have about the work that you do that maybe a local bike shop can't benefit from, because the process that you've just described there is a lot more time intensive and thus expensive for the consumer. You get a bike that's cleaned the right way, but if a consumer is both expecting a clean bike and expecting it done the cheapest way possible, what we're saying here is that those two things don't match up all that well. You can kind of have one or the other.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a separation there, and I think there's many ways to do this. And I think like if a mechanic, many good mechanics would degrease a whole bike and whole drivetrain as a complete bike, and then they'll pull it apart. The outcome's the same, right? Like they're still inspecting the crank, they're still cleaning out the bearings. Whatever degrease it gets on that bike is not causing any harm at that point. But yeah, I think there is also ongoing pressure, and the bike business is tough. And I think there is suddenly going to be a big separation in between what individual stores do, and you will find it's quite common for general services to include a basic drivetrain degrease, but the customer isn't paying for that time to go any further. And so be it. That's what the price is, and I think it's just up to the stores to explain what they do and don't do, and hopefully upsell customers into the next service package that actually offers that level of service that the customer could benefit from. And I think that's just an ongoing educational thing rather than taking the easiest and quickest sale. I think actually trying to educate the customer is probably the right outcome, but easier said than done.
Yeah, well, I dare say we're preaching to the converted with our audience on this one. So
Yeah, maybe. So anyway, I'm sure I'll hear more on that one. So yeah, I suspect we'll be following up on that one for many episodes to come. Ron, I think along the lines of maintenance and mechanical things, let's have a PSA. And this one actually comes from listener Lucas, who just wanted to remind us not to trust the markings on your bars. So I think Lucas was specifically referring to drop handlebars and the markings that are placed on them for aligning your hoods or your brake levers. But yeah, I would say
those things are make believe.
Yeah, they're fictional. But yeah, I think the same PSA applies to any handlebar that has markings on it in terms of like where to cut from for a mountain bike handlebar. I would also say don't trust those because they tend not to match left to right. So yeah, it's definitely a good PSA, good reminder. But yeah, on a drop handlebar, very, very, very few manufacturers get this right. I can't name one.
If you're looking at me to name one, I can't name one. This isn't just handlebars. This extends to like the markings on your shoes for cleats and seat post markings.
I trust those more.
Yeah, you trust the shoes?
Yeah, a lot of the time I find them actually not too bad.
No, I mean they're just fucking stuck on there for, well, at least they used to be. I had it from a shoe manufacturer. This is going back a decade, but I had it from a shoe manufacturer that don't trust those. We just stick those on.
Yeah, no, I tend to use them and then we'll double check with a straight edge and a few other things. But yeah, I don't know. I don't find them too far off normally. But at least on modern shoes. But yeah, handlebars. Ronan, what do you use for aligning your hoods, given that you can't trust the handlebar markings?
My preferred method is to remove the front wheel and then rest the drops on like a desk or worktop surface and make sure that they're even on both sides, so that the same point, say it's like 10 centimeters in from the end of the drop, is on the flat surface. And then I'll rotate the whole bike forward. And if your levers are at the same height, then, and you haven't adjusted things like reach and stuff like that, everything else being equal, the tips of the brake lever should both touch the desk or the worktop or whatever you're using at the same time. And that's typically, I have a quicker way, and that's just to like lay a straight edge across both levers and then like eyeball it against the tops of the bars.
Yeah, best done before bar taping.
Yeah. Or, I mean, if you've got aero bars that don't have bar tape, it works after tape.
Yeah.
But so long as you're, if you're wildly off that you need to remove the tape to get them, you got bigger issues going on there. But what's your way of doing it?
Yeah, I think probably worth noting all methods would probably involve no bar tape, but the old school way, which I still occasionally fall back on, is metal ruler from the drop of the handlebar, from the end of the drop, and you point it toward the lever, and you sort of bend the rule up to the tip of the brake lever and actually take that measurement. And then, same from the other side, and you sort of look to match them. I guess my real process is, start with the bike on the ground, wheels in, and sort of align it to the ground to where you actually want the lever to be. And then I'll basically set up, say, the right lever, and then I'll start looking, put the bike in the stand and then look to match the left lever to that right lever where I want it to be.
When you say match it up to the ground, do you mean like vertical
the
distance
angle
from the ground?
No, just the angle, like just setting the angle by eye or by measurement but just bike on the ground so I can actually see what the angle is. And it's I can actually feel it and all that, and then so I'll lock in one lever and then look to match that measurement once the bike's back in the stand. So ruler is one way that I think is pretty proven. You'll still see a lot of older school mechanics using, but these days I actually generally just use a newer tool which saves time and isn't always perfect, but generally is great. Is it's called the Abbey Bike Tools lever setter, and basically you remove the headset top cap and it screws in place of the headset top cap. Again, not every bike can fit this, but any bike with like an M6 top cap thread will. And then you get a derailleur hanger tool threads into that, and it's the derailleur hanger tool becomes like a gauge to measure from left to right and checks the plane. the issues with it is that it doesn't necessarily account for like the angle of the lever. So it'll set the height, but if the angle differs from left to right, then yeah, that's an issue. So you need to watch for that, and then also like potentially if you had like a bent stem or a handlebar that wasn't straight, that'll throw it off. So, but it can also be used as a diagnostic tool for that if you're really chasing down something that's going on weird. Twisted stems are really rare though, but I have had them over the years. So yeah,
I can't recall having seen one.
yeah. So yeah, I haven't seen them for years.
I just want to go back. I was just clarifying that you weren't measuring vertically from the ground because obviously, like,
correct,
frame geometry, tire size, all those things would impact that. I thought you were going to say you were like getting the height difference from saddle to lever.
No,
but yeah, no, I know now what you mean. I just sent you, the listeners won't be able to see this, Dave, but I just sent you a link to the Beachy support lever height regulator, which I've known about for about 10 years or so and I always wanted one. This is basically like it's a tool that fits into where your bar end plug would go, and then it has like an arm that reaches forward and then a measure that you can use to measure to the bottom of the brake lever. I've always wanted one of them. Have you ever used one?
I have one.
Oh my god.
I don't have the Beachy support.
Ask a stupid question, get an obvious answer.
I actually can't remember. I think it was a Dutch company, a Dutch maker, looked to make like a much more affordable copy of that, which is the one I have. It's basically the identical design, but just made out of like 80-20 extrusion. So it's like sort of like that square T-rail extrusion. So a bit simpler to replicate. Does the same thing though. Typically, you'll see these used in the World Tour, and the reason why they're used by team mechanics in the World Tour is they have to set up multiple bikes identically. So they're using this tool to set lever height from one bike to the next for that same rider. And so they'll take the measurement of the lever and then be able to replicate it left to right, but then across multiple bikes at service course, for example, when they're assembling the bikes at the beginning of the season. So that's where that tool comes in. That all said, I don't use it because what I found is that you can actually get some variance in how it measures based on how you put it into the end of the bar.
Well, when you were saying square extrusion there, I thought maybe that might add in some variance, but
no, that the actual tool's quite good. It just purely comes down to how it mounts into the end of the bar, and what's really interesting is those expanding plugs in the bar don't actually lock in square every time. I was fully sold on this tool, and then an engineer reached out in my DMs one day and was like, "Hey, have you not noticed that it moves like in a off plane to what the spirit level shows?" I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?" It's like just under the expanding plug, do it up, take a measurement. Under the expanding plug, do it up, take a measurement. Under the expanding plug, and I'm like, it's changing. And so so that ruined the tool for me. I think there are ways.
It's a bit like aero testing.
Yes, exactly. So I think there are ways around that, but end of the day, I've just kind of gone back to say like the Abbey tool, which is not perfect, but decent enough level of confidence in it. So
while it might work for that World Tour setting that you just described, where all the handlebars are the same, if you're using it from like one bike to another with different drops and different shapes, and that it's going to be useful for maybe getting left and right at the same height, but it's not going to be useful for getting the same position across bikes with different handlebars.
Yep, correct. Yeah. So anyway, there's no. I'm going to say there's multiple methods, and some are better than others. But I think it's personal preference. End of the day, for what you think works best, and for some people, I mean, they can just put the bike on the ground and look by eye at a flat edge in front of them, and that works well enough, and we'll get the levers square as well. And I think there's plenty of methods.
One last question, Dave. Should the levers be square?
Depends whether you ask Steve Hogg or not.
And what does Steve Hogg say?
The famous bike fitter who has mentored and trained many other bike fitters who have differing opinions to traditional bike fit. Steve Hogg will adapt the hood height. In my experience, perhaps he's changed. This is many years ago, but Steve Hogg will adapt the hood height to match someone's imbalances. I think, it depends who you ask. I know other bike fitters who would go about the other way and say no, the rider will adapt to an even hood height, and that's the better method. So yeah, different schools of thought on that, but I have my levers set squarely these days.
I typically have them at the same height, but I've broken my left elbow twice and my left wrist once.
Oh,
and
okay.
so it my left arm doesn't exactly sit at the same angle as my right, and so I've started accommodating for that in my lever angle.
Interesting. So for me, my mind is weak, and so if I had them uneven, it would be the only thing I focused on in the entire ride, and I'd end up crashing because I'd be distracted by it.
I mean, I used to be that way, but it's just like the improvement in comfort has brought it out of my mind. So
interesting. All right. Well, anyway, don't trust your markings on your bars. Measure it, and the whole subject of whether they should be even to begin with is clearly one we might come back to in the future. Well, it's time for our tech news corner, but before we do, I think it's just worth a little note for the people on our free feed that Escape Collective still needs more members. We're getting closer to hitting a point of sustainability as a business, and to the point where we can start to look to grow again as far as the headcount and our resources and what sort of content we're able to do. But we're actually not there yet, and yeah, we know we've got a few thousand listeners on the free feed, and while we love having you here, just know we have no other means of making revenue. We don't take money for advertising. We don't take affiliate money. We don't take sponsored content or any of that. It's just purely our subscribers that's why we continue to exist, and how Ronan gets to feed his family, and how I get to purchase tools I potentially don't need. So for that, please consider supporting Escape Collective. It gives you access to all of our podcasts, many of which, if you're listening to this free feed, you're missing out on. Gives you access to all of our content as well. So there's plenty to get involved in, and we think it's worth paying for. Ronan, anything to add to that?
Time to pay up.
Anyway, head to escapecollective.com/join, and seriously, please consider signing up. On that page, you'll also find Escape Collective's purchase program, which is something just exclusive for members. Escape doesn't actually earn any revenue from it. It's just something that we hope makes our membership more attractive. And within that, you'll find exclusive offers with a bunch of big brands, with discounts and deals that you just don't find elsewhere. It's actually a requirement of ours for brands to be in that program, that they offer members something they wouldn't typically have available to other people. So bigger discounts. Anyway, plenty to get your value out of a membership from. And let's get to some tech news, and then obviously we'll wrap up the episode with Ask a Wrench, which is for members only. First on the list as far as new tech goes, I think comes from Rotor. They've put their foot back in the door as far as a group set manufacturer. It's been 10 years since we last saw Rotor's hydraulic shifting group set, and they're back, but not in quite the way you'd think. It's now a wireless group set. It will work from 10 to 13 speeds, and I guess the big thing to know here is that Rotor got acquired by Wheeltop, the Chinese manufacturer that has its own EDS wireless group sets. And a lot of this tech seems like it's Wheeltop's, with a new logo and perhaps some fancier finishing. More on this to come, but it's certainly intriguing, and I think the collaboration between like Rotor with their power meter technology and their experience in cassette manufacturing and all that, combined with Wheeltop's know-how and the electronic side of things, looks to potentially create a bit of more competition for the big Shimanos and Campagnolas of the world.
I got a super quick look at this at Sea Otter Europe over the weekend. I was there for like an hour. There will be no content from Sea Otter Europe. I was not supposed to be at Sea Otter Europe. I accidentally found myself at Sea Otter Europe. There's a lot of plastic in this, Dave. A lot of plastic.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So it's I mean, as mentioned, I think it's more Wheeltop than it is Rotor. I think, but it's also something I'm still trying to get a hold of the brands involved. I'm trying to reach out to Wheeltop because I actually have one of their group sets in for test, and I'm keen to find out whether what we're seeing is the future of wheel top group sets. In that, in the future, it'll just be under the Rotor brand. But time will tell. We have questions, and hopefully soon we'll have answers. Speaking of drivetrains and shifting, SRAM, something we actually spoke about last week was SRAM had sneakily released a firmware update for its transmission axis group sets on its mountain bikes and some gravel bikes. An update that brought a speed improvement. And yeah, now officially SRAM have released it to basically everyone. So anyone that has these group sets can now download the firmware update and get a speed boost. Basically how it works is just transmission has always been like mapped to the cassette, so the derailleur will only shift at a speed that it knows the chain and cassette will mesh together at. So basically you push the button, and that speed is basically designed to ensure that the chain isn't going to go across more than one cog at a time, so that you're never going to get that chain really diagonal or at risk of breaking. And yeah, this firmware update just basically improves that speed that they claim through a few years of in-market testing. I think they've realized that they perhaps were more conservative than they needed to be, and that they can increase the speeds a bit without any harm or risk to increase chain breakages or anything like that. So I think it's as simple as that. But one to look out for if you are on transmission, then it's a free update. Just log into the SRAM app and connect up your drivetrain and download the firmware, and away you go. Next on the list is something that I've got my hands on, which is the Trek Checkout. Yeah, it's the bike that we saw at the Trans-Balkan race with Justinus riding it to the win and to the fastest known time. And yeah, it's now official. It's 60 mil travel front, 55 mil travel rear. It's got a progressive gravel bike geometry, not too dissimilar to like a Santa Cruz Stigmata. So all based around like a longer reach, short stem. It's got a very high stack height, so it's not designed at the races of this world. It's got room for 700 by 56 millimeter tires. If you want to know more, head to Escape Collective. You'll see my write-up on this. I haven't had time yet to review the whole bike, but I've got a fairly detailed first look at it. And then on top of that, I actually sat down with a couple of engineers from Trek about the bike, and didn't talk so much about the bike, but we really dove into like the testing behind the bike and how they came to design a full suspension gravel bike and the why behind all that. So there's interesting chat. I got chat with the lead design engineer of the bike, and also the lead from the analysis team, who was a biomechanical engineer. And basically they'd done some really sophisticated testing that I was, for selfish reasons, quite intrigued to learn about. So that's what that podcast is. It at the time of listening to this, you'll find it in your podcast feed. So do check that out. Related to that bike though, what made that 60 mil travel possible and that increased tire clearance possible is RockShox have got a new gravel suspension fork, the Rudy XL. So yeah, it's 50 or 60 mil of travel. It fits up to a 700 by 56 millimeter tire, so that's 29 by 2.2. Otherwise, it's quite familiar to the old Rudy gravel suspension fork. But yeah, I think the main thing to know here is just it's quite tall in the axle to crown length. So you're basically going to need to get a brand new gravel bike that's specifically built around this fork in order to want to use it, because I think it adds, off the top of my head, I think it adds about 40 millimeters in terms of the ride height versus a regular gravel suspension fork. So all new geometry required for this one. So
maybe we have a talk about this bike, because I haven't seen it yet, but after the embargo lifts, maybe next week.
Okay.
Not specifically about this bike, but maybe more specifically about the future of full suspension drop bar. And like this fork it's not active, it's not flight attendant, is it?
No, it's manual lockout. So yeah, it's not even remote lockout. It's literally just on the fork crown is the only lockout option. I think electronic suspension is inevitable for gravel suspension, but I think we're still a few years away from that. I think, if I'm being perfectly honest, I think the delay is market demand. I think, gravel suspension is still kind of niche and still proving itself. And I think once it proves itself, then we'll see the investment in the next step of it. So
what I want to ask you next week, Dave, is why you stop with gravel. But anyway,
why what?
Conversation why stop at gravel? But anyway, that's a
Why stop
conversation
at
for next
gravel?
week.
Yeah. So it's, what is it, 1990 all over again. We're at Paris-Roubaix and RockShox is back in the World Tour. So anyway, let's come back to that one.
I don't think I'm going to win this conversation, but anyway, yeah, we can look forward to that.
Very good. All right, next on the list, there's a new helmet that's just taken top spots in Virginia Tech's rankings, which I think is worth paying attention to. It is a new helmet, but it's based on a new rotational anti-concussion system. So it's called the Release Layer System, RLS. And currently it's being licensed by Canyon for their new and upcoming mountain bike helmet. And then Hexa is also another company using it. I think RLS is actually under shared ownership of some of the owners of Hexa helmets. But yeah, basically it kind of provides like panels on the outside that almost slip on ball bearings. So very interesting design. Head to, again, escapecollective.com to see what this thing looks like and check out the details. But early days for it. But early tests, at least from Virginia Tech, show that it's setting a new benchmark. So will be interesting. But yeah, as Alex Hunt, who wrote about this, sort of suggested, is it might test very well in lab-based testing, but what's unknown is how it actually works as a real-world helmet. Ventilation, comfort, weight, durability, all these various factors that are just as important in terms of a usable product. I think are still yet to be proven. So one to watch.
And interestingly, though, that the new helmet at the top of Virginia Tech's rankings now have this RLS technology, but it also, the helmet at the top of that list now also has that high bar strap thing that I reviewed last year on the Canyon Road helmets.
Yeah.
It was just an observation I made when I seen that.
Yeah, there's definitely progress being made in the helmet world right now. Like when you look at that Canyon helmet of new safety systems, new helmet strap system.
It's interesting that Canyon have both. Like I think they're like trying to, helmets is maybe a newish thing for them, and they're trying to not just do another helmet, but license these things that bring a I don't know if tangible, but definitely a visual and unique selling point to them. Like when you see this RLS, the video of it working, you go, oh yeah, I can see how that might work. And when you're not selling these on shop floors and you're selling them online, I assume you probably need things like that to help.
Potentially, yeah. I also think it's smart business. I mean, they're very clearly moving into being a full service bike brand, meaning they sell everything a cyclist would need. And I think the brand that's previously done that the best is Specialized. And you Specialized as a private company, you don't really have access to what sales figures and what bike does what, and where the money comes from. But plenty of rumors and plenty of previous staff had suggested that it's categories like their helmets, saddles, and shoes that can be real cash cows to the business. And yeah, I think Canyon looks fairly well poised for some of these things to perhaps cause a bit of a market upset in that regard. So makes sense from a business point of view. But obviously those products need to prove themselves. So one to watch. Lucky last is anyone that has a rear radar for road cycling purposes or gravel. There's a new market entrance from Lezyne. So Lezyne's long been a key name in the lighting game, sort of like a good value lighting option, and they now have a rear radar. So claimed 150 meters radar detection, 300 lumen rear lights. The mounting on this is interesting in that it doesn't use like a GoPro or a Garmin style mount. It's just purely like wings built into the light that you have then a rubber strap go around. So much more like a regular rear light than most radar units. That all said, as Suvi Loppinen of our staff has previously covered, and as has GP Llama on YouTube covered, there's a lot of radars on the market that are basically flashy junk, literally flashy junk. And so I would say with anything in the radar category that is new to market, wait for reviews and wait for reviews that actually compare and test false positives and false negatives
I'd
and all
say, like anything in the radar market, if it doesn't say Garmin, don't bother.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the conclusion of Suvi's review. I think Wahoo seemed like it might be a promising new entrant, but still had some time to prove itself. But yeah, Garmin is still the safe bet. But yeah, Lezyne's entry is interesting, but I'd say just hold off for now until we see the likes of GP Llama or our own Suvi offer some opinion on that one, because a rear radar that's not doing what it's meant to is a dangerous thing. All right, Ronan. Well, I think it's time to head on over to our members only section for Ask a Wrench. And yeah, this week, while you did a great job last week, and I did a okay job, we actually got Zach Edwards of the Boulder Groupetto back to help me answer the questions. And so for that, yeah, this week we've got some questions related to some Shimano Di2 woes. There's a one about wireless shifter placement options for SRAM users, and yeah, how to put shifters in more places. And also, we've got a question about seat posts creaking and cleaning seat tubes, which is a fun one. So yeah, all of that and hopefully more awaits in the next section.
Just take the seat post out and put it into the bike wash machine.
Correct. Yep. You mean without the seat post in?
Yeah.
Just fill it
Put
up.
the frame in without the seat post, yeah.
Yeah, you know the bike's clean when the water comes to the top of the seat tube. So anyway, cool.
Dave, we have to wrap it up because I have to both ride a new bike today and go aero testing tires.
Good.
So let's wrap it up.
All right. Well, enjoy the day. Yeah. For those that are about to get cut off and don't hear the member section, just remember escapecollective.com/join. Join, sign up, and yeah, get access to everything that we do at Escape Collective. Until next week. Thanks, Ronan. Enjoy the testing.
Thank you.
Thanks to Will Jones of Red Bricks Media for the editing and mixing of this episode.